this was the first Multigun Nationals where modified division was honored, recognized, whatever you want to say, and it's a provisional division. And this is something that I've been championing for a long time. I didn't write the rule set or anything like that, but I did propose a couple of years ago on the podcast that rules need to change for TAC ops. And everybody got their pitchforks out and their torches. And then as good libertarians, we decided like, well, let's just create a whole new division, and then the market can decide. And I think it's pretty close that the market has decided. Like, modified was super popular. And one of the questions that I got was, how come I wasn't shooting modified after championing it for so long? But the last
did you
minute,
not? I didn't even notice that.
I know, right? At the last
What the
minute, I
hell?
decided to read the rule book, and number 12 here. So on equipment requirements, so optical sights. So on modified division, it says for pistol, it says yes, required, must be attached directly to slide between rear of slide and ejection port, may not be mounted to the frame in any way. So I have an STI DVC 3 gun that I shoot in 3-gun matches. It does not have a dot on it. And so at the last minute, I had to switch to TAC because a dot is actually required in modified, which I thought was kind of interesting. And Max, you can tell me your thoughts on this, because typically we look at equipment things as like the max, right? And like, for example, TAC ops, you're allowed one optic on your rifle that can be magnified. You're not in limited, but if you shot your limited optic in TAC ops, they would allow you to shoot that division. Is just you're taking the hit of not actually having magnification. So that I thought was kind of interesting to me. But then, I see that same rule written that same way for carry optics and limited optics. So maybe it's just a USPSA standard thing. What do you think on that?
It's an archaic rule back from when people were complaining that like production shooters are just going to shoot carry optics with their normal guns and beat everybody. And so in order to address that, they required a dot in carry optics, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in one gun, right? Like
Yeah.
you're shooting one gun, you either have a dot or you don't. But in this, like, I think this was handled really poorly. I know the Mullers got bumped to open because of it. So that they didn't,
That's a weird
and
thing,
a
is like
couple other people.
the penalty is always getting bumped to open. And
Yeah,
I find that as a weird penalty also. So what, the Mullers were shooting modified and they didn't have dots
modified
or something?
with TAC handguns.
Yeah.
Right.
Michael Lindsay got the same thing happen to him.
Yeah, there were a
It is
few.
weird that you get bumped to open. Like, why not just go
It's
put you? I don't know.
like
Anyway,
as Rangemaster MD, like especially being a provisional division, I would, it's like, hey, oh, this is an obvious oversight. We copy and pasted from carry optics. This, like if it takes going and talking to each individual who's shooting the iron sights, uh, like it's understood at this point that there's no implicit advantage to either irons
yep.
or optics at these matches. It's like it comes down to your fundamentals and what you train with. So like just address it now and say, hey, like, okay, we made this oversight saying it was required, but we're going to
Mm-hmm.
allow you to compete in the division. I think that was very dumb. But then
Yeah.
also from your perspective, like you didn't shoot it because of that rule, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
I
so
know
there's
of
no
at
good way
least
to
two other
handle it then at
people.
that time.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
So like because you had competitors like yourself who specifically didn't shoot the division because they saw how it was written, then like there really was no good way to handle it at that time. That's probably the
Yeah.
only way you could have handled it is bump people to open. It's just like I that just really irritates me how that was let through. When you're
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you just copy and paste something and not think about it when you're making provisional division? Like, it's not that many things. It's a grid right there. Just like
Yeah.
look at each thing. It's like, hey, is this what we want for the division? Yeah, okay. Like
Well,
check it off.
yeah. So I agree on that one, and I do think I think it's kind of funny that nobody caught it after how many people have looked at it. Considering
Yeah,
like how big the USPSA membership is, and all these people looked at it and no one saw that. I think that's kind of humorous, actually. I'm bummed I didn't get a shoot modified, but didn't ruin my day. I would have shot modified if I had been allowed to, and then I wonder if how many people like that are out there like me, and so would modified have been like what was it, the second biggest division instead of the third? So kind of wonder about that. But then,
yeah. It wasn't even close. They were 25% more participation than TAC, and only behind Open. Open had 70, Modified had 49.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, how many people were in TAC? You said 49 in
39.
modified. 39 in TAC?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So I had it backwards. So modified was the second largest division.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. So anyway, the point is like
That's what you said. Yeah.
I don't know, man. The point is that I think requiring that is kind of silly, and then I think it's hilarious that it goes back to production and carry optics and people bitching like, oh well, they're gonna come in with their production guns and shoot our division. Like, who gives a shit? Who gives a
Right.
shit? Let them come in.
Yeah, you have a
I
dot,
think
beat
that's
them.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You have a dot, just beat them. Like
Nah, yeah,
your ego's on the line. Get over it.
yeah. There's so much that we do in the shooting sports that are to protect a handful of people's egos. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And this is another one, but I don't know. So the good news though is it's provisional, so I can now provide that comment to board at uspsa.org and tell them I was dissatisfied. So
One thing also with Modified is I know it was AMAX's intention that you were allowed a bipod
mhm.
on the stage. That was like the modifier, basically, like for your rifle, that you get one of these. It has to stay attached to the rifle for the stage. But then the way the rule was written, also carried over from Open, was bipods or similar. Similar meaning any supporting device.
Oh,
So basically, in the middle of the match, we had some modified shooters using bags and got clarification on it. Clarification from AMAX came in not allowed, and then but Troy's the range master, and it came in. His clarification was yeah, it's allowed. It's copied from Open. Like that was the intention with how we wrote the rule. So
yeah.
obviously, there's some miscommunication leading up to it within USPSA internally and AMAX and like the Multigun rules committee and everything.
And all other matches where modified is a thing, it's must stay. Yes, bipod must stay attached. It's not similar. So
Right.
that is not even a way I would have read that rule. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because then that's another thing I can mention that needs to be changed. But I would never
Yeah,
even have
that's an
considered
easy
that.
fix. Like
Yeah,
make
for
it
sure.
different from Open for sure. Don't leave it as it is.
No. Speaking of open, so on the gear top, do you have any more modified thoughts, or can I move on to open real quick?
Shotgun was changed leading up to the match from maximum 12 held in the tube to 13 total in the gun
Oh,
with
that was
no
changed.
magazine tube length. Yeah, about
Okay.
a few weeks before the match, I believe. Um, so that's one more thing. I think 13 total in the gun, like maybe a limit on the magazine tube length makes sense, but like 13 plus one in the gun is a good definition. Or sorry,
Yeah.
12 plus one in the
12
gun,
plus 1.
13 total is a good definition. Because then you get the guys who are like, hey, I can go slow. Can I have 12 plus one? Like, I don't know. But should you allow, 16 round tubes and modified? It's not allowed in other uh, three gun matches that run it, right?
Yeah, you can actually have. I mean, there's no restriction on tube length, and like on
Oh, I thought there was before this. Interesting. That's
no
why IPSC
restriction.
has the extender ones
So
where like
IPSC
you shove them in
has
and they come out.
correct. IPSC has a length
Okay.
restriction, and I think there's a box, or maybe the box went away. I'm not sure, but I'm not opposed to having like a length restriction or anything. The capacity makes sense, but my thought is it would be very convenient if it matched to IPSC divisions, simply for the fact that there's probably going to be a handful of people that are going to want to go to World Shoot and maybe use the stuff that they've been using all season, and then they find
Hmm.
out that that's not within the IPSC rules, but it's in the USPSA rules. That seems like kind of silly, right? So it's like that production capacity thing that people are always talking about in USPSA pistol matches. It's 10 in
Right.
USPSA and 15 internationally, right? Yeah. So that I see a benefit to getting on the same page on that. However, I haven't seen any attempt to.
Well, we have provisional division edits to make the next year, so
Yeah, there you go.
no worries.
All right. So open. So last year, did you shoot Multigun Nationals last year?
No.
So I saw.
Wait, was there a Multigun Nationals? Yeah, it was Clinton House. Okay, 2 years
Yep,
ago there was.
Clinton House. Yep. Yeah, 2 years ago was the one that they skipped. So
Right.
last year I saw a video of Scott Green shooting off of like 3 tripods, and I think it was Scott Green. Probably shouldn't throw anyone under the bus. So a person, but shooting off of 3 tripods, like there's 3 different offhand rifle positions, and they just stationed a tripod there. Well, it turns
Well,
out
like the whole squad did it, right? Like the whole squad comes up, here's our tripods, like everyone uses it.
100%. Turns out the whole squad
Yeah.
did it. So now it becomes like not only like you have to travel with a tripod to be competitive in this division, like you have to have, at least 4 friends that shoot open division as well, and also have a $1,300 tripod. So I thought that was kind of silly the way that rule was interpreted last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they went the complete opposite direction this year of where whatever you start with, and this was told for several people in open. I've heard it asked several times, but whatever you started with was what you had to end the stage with. So you couldn't like, I always associate UMAX with the kneeling bipod, and then shooting that from a kneeling position, ditching it, and then moving over to like a prone position where you forgot another bipod.
Right.
And it's like the Russian nesting bipods on your rifle, but that was not okay in this match, even though last year was like tripod nationals, right? So it's like the 2 opposite ends. And again, I think there's some sort of minimum or middle ground that can happen here. You have any thoughts on that?
I like, it's open, let open shooters run whatever they want, but you don't allow pre-staging. I think that's against the spirit of what a shooting challenge should be. Like,
I agree.
The stage was designed, here's the stage, bring your stuff, and then execute it on the clock.
Boom, same page. All right, we have a 2-man consensus, so let it be done.
The double bipod thing, it's you drop a mag on the stage to reload.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to keep that on your person.
Yeah.
The 2 bipod thing is from IPSC. Like before I did, I watched Timo Rintala do it in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
With the kneeling down to prone, and actually an IPSC rifle, they're trying to get rid of that. They're like forcing you to only have 1 bipod. So these guys are making like these 2-legged bipods that basically rotate like this to like kneeling length, prone length.
I like that.
They're trying to make up new rules to get around that too. And they're like, what else you got? Well, like we're gonna engineer around this.
Life finds a way, man. Life finds a way. Yeah. I mean, good for you for, mentioning who you got it from, but you're just the first person I was aware of with that. So on the ditching mag things, there was a question of that too. And,
really?
Of course, well, so
they were thinking of okay. Interesting.
No, that's not where I was going with that. It was, an open shooter's smart ass, response to, you can't ditch stuff was, well, what about magazines? And so I was trying to convince, Forrest Lathrop, who's my buddy here in Cheyenne and rode out there with and stuff. I was trying to convince him that he had to retain all his mags in open. I was like, I can ditch anything, but since you brought it up, you got to retain all your mags. But he didn't think that was nearly as funny as I did. But it happens. Yeah. So I agree. Like on the not staging stuff, the staging of multiple tripods, I thought was kind of silly. It's like, you might as well just go make your own wall and then put it wherever you want it,
Yeah, it's like once you realize that, it's just like I don't know how many shooters even expected that to be a thing. They just like had the tripods on them, and then once you realize that, you're like, well, shit, like we have to do it this way. It's just the only way we can. So like by making the rule like that, like you really force people to be at a disadvantage or squad up with someone.
Yeah. And on the other side of it, having to carry everything with you really removed the tripod option from the all rifle stage. And again, I recommend going and checking out the videos I made, because you'll see all the stages. But the first position was from a 0-turn lawnmower, and a tripod would have been really advantageous on that stage for open shooters for sure.
Right.
Even if they had it deployed on the clock. Yeah, for sure.
Leaning back and like a leg bipod kind of.
Yeah. And people got super clever on that. So I was excited to see that shooting challenge, because it did require a lot of thought, and I'm not, I got some help on it. because
Yeah.
my position looked like shit, and someone was like, "Hey, you look like shit. You need some help here," and so that was cool. But yeah. So, but that said, like everybody in open went with the big long bipod, and then ended up taking it with them on the stage, so it wasn't too much trouble. But I still think like if you were allowed to ditch stuff, most people would have gone with a tripod on that stage and not even tried to figure out the bipod. So it is kind of interesting how when you have a certain set of tools, you can make it work. But if the other option was available, no one, I don't think anyone would have went that way.
Right.
That's my thought. What do
So
you think?
are you saying like with the tripod on that stage? Because like for me, if you're not allowed to pre-stage it, that means like you're holding it on your person. So you'd
Mm-hmm.
have to be like you couldn't be on target set, right? You'd have to like be in the air, not touching the ground, and then set it down. Like
Yeah. So
that's how I want to interpret it. But
yeah, I agree. Like you'd have to be holding it. A lot of folks have like those carbon fiber tripods, which weigh almost nothing. Is way less
mhm.
than what a rifle weighs. So especially that one where you could start seated in the zero turn. I can imagine someone holding up a tripod and then getting into that position on the clock.
Right.
But yeah,
That
guess
wouldn't
we'll never know.
necessarily be bad. I mean, I think the advantage comes on being like pre-aimed, and you had to have your muzzle down.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm careful on the pre-aim because that was definitely a start pointing position, right?
As far
Like
as like,
there was like an area that we had to aim the rifle at
yeah, so
on the
you had
stick, I
to you
think.
had to angle down. Basically,
Yeah.
I mean, what I did, a lot of people do is just like get your get your sight on target in your position, and then point your muzzle down, and on the buzzer, just
Yep.
drop the stock back in your shoulder.
Yep.
So in that case, like I think it's roughly similar to holding a tripod, setting it down, and then getting on target.
Yeah, I
Um,
got you. All right.
yeah,
So what do we have? What else do we have on gear and divisions?
just I guess I'm super psyched for modified. I think it's a huge success, even with the little hiccups on definitions. Like I think it's going to be a really really successful division that everyone in the three gun world has been wanting for a while. Thoughts on shotguns and handguns really needed to happen. Definitely. Um,
Yeah, I think it's the future.
yeah, for sure. Like I really really was irritated by the TAC limited disparity because like they're exactly the same division,
Yeah.
just with the rifle optic being. It's like that's so uninteresting. Of like the three main divisions you have, open TAC limited, like basically one is just like, hey, I have good eyes and I'm trophy chasing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that to me, that just divisions are so important to the uh, like the core of a shooting discipline. That if one of your three divisions is just like this placeholder thing, like at least make it different. Like yeah, I understand it's cool to shoot 1x optics, but make it 30 rounds rifle, make it more limited on the handgun, make it more limited on the shotgun somehow. Like actually have a tube length restriction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now you have the opportunity to do that, which I think is not a very high priority because I think like TAC modified and open are a great solid like core of divisions,
Yeah.
but like I I think you can get rid of one of those two and uh, make make each gun individually different in each of the three main divisions. It just brings more interest.
Yeah. So, did you ever listen to the podcast that I did on my proposed division changes? I'm
I
so.
did
Oh,
a
okay,
while ago,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. I'm so spot on with exactly what you're saying. Like, I agree that limited and tack are too close. I also thought like, we should remove the D60 availability from tack and put it in open only.
Hmm.
And then the 30 round magazines in limited, totally agree with. The shotgun limited to like 9 rounds total, totally agree with. I think that makes it a whole different game.
Right.
Because one of the things that I've noticed from shooting modified division in like my local club matches, even with my iron sight pistol, um, when you load your shotgun up full, it's a completely different game. You're now concentrating more on shooting than you are like where you're loading. And you think like, well, that's just an extra quad that you have in there. It can't be that big of a deal. It's a big fucking deal. So
Hmm.
doing it the opposite way where, now limited has 8 rounds in the tube plus one in the chamber versus what we typically run in TAC or limited now, it was like a 12 round tube. So you can basically plus up off the buzzer, that would be a huge deal. That would be a huge deal. And other matches have years ago I was beating the drum on this and how they're too similar, and other matches have made strides to separate them. Texas 3 Gun is one good example. They have like a 32 round mag limit because one guy had Daniel defense mags or something, and like that makes sense. The one guy on earth. That makes sense. I think that's a good thing, and I can definitely see a situation where we would change limited division. Is like the thing I hear now, Max, and you probably hear a lot of this too, especially with PCSL, is that they say that limited division is the cheap division for people to start in. Like, how do you figure? Like, I've got my my $2,000 AR and my $400 optic, and then I've got my $3,000 to $5,000 pistol. Yeah, that's real cheap to get started in. It's like there's no other rules other than that one optic thing that you could even remotely argue that makes it less expensive. And so I don't buy that shit at all.
Yeah, that's not even an interesting point. It's like if you're reiterating that, it just shows that you haven't thought about anything in much detail.
Yeah. Yeah, like a good example of that is like in the that's not in the shooting sports is like racing. Like the Spec Miata series is supposed to be it was supposed to be a budget series, and you're all racing Miatas. Well, now now to stay within the rules, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on shit that doesn't matter, instead of like power adders and suspension that are outside of the rules. Now you're trying to spend thousands of dollars to stay in the rules. So like at the end of the day, it's a game, and everybody's here to play. And a lot of people actually do like buying equipment. So I don't buy the fact that it's the lower cost. It's like production.
If you're starting, you can shoot any division.
100%. Yeah. If you're starting,
hey, I'm just getting into 3 Gun. I'm not worried about finishing top 5 in my division. I can shoot open if I want to. Like, let me just see how I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like people do expect to shoot top 5 though when they start, and that's the reason we don't see a lot of people coming back. So that's a whole other topic. We should talk about that sometime. But